So last night I watched the episode 3 of The Last of Us, and wow, this episode is absolutely heartbreaking yet beautiful at the same time. Now, this episode does deviate from the game whenever you get to this point in the story in the game. In the main sense is because this episode is an hour and 20 minutes, and the majority of the episode is focused around the relationship of Bill and Frank. And me personally, I thought it was extremely well done. I thought the acting and the effects and obviously the music, just everything was phenomenal. And there is Ellie and Joel in this episode. They're in the beginning and then they're at the end, and Joel's in the episode a little bit in the middle whenever they're doing the backstory of how he and Bill met with Tess and how they learned all the codes and stuff. And yeah, so obviously, Bill and Frank's backstory is not in the game. It's only hinted at in the game whenever you find Frank's body after he hung himself and you read that note that Frank left for Bill. And so yeah, they do change the fate of Bill in the show compared to the game. And by the end of the episode, Bill dies. So the big deviation is that Joel has met Bill, but Ellie and Bill never interact. Obviously in the game that was a big thing because they have like banter because she's messing with the stuff and he's like, don't touch that stuff. And it's just really funny, but in the show, Ellie and Bill do not meet each other. And after Frank and Bill are decided to take their own lives together, Ellie reads a note that Bill left for Joel, pretty much giving him all his weapons and his truck, and he said to take care of Tess, but obviously Tess is gone now. Whenever Ellie was reading the note about Bill, talking about how whenever he was alone, he loved whenever people would die until he found that one person he could take care of and he had to protect, and the camera was just focused on Joel, and it was beautiful because he was thinking of Ellie and also Tess. And yeah, the acting is incredible. Pedro is phenomenal. Nick Offerman as Bill is perfect. That's perfect casting. And also, I think the guy's name is Murray Arlett or something, who played Frank, and extremely well done. And going back to whenever Frank and Bill first meet, and I'm sorry guys if this review is all over the place, I'm just, whatever pops into my head is what I'm talking about. And so whenever the first time that Bill and Frank meet, Frank falls into this hole, which was a trap set by Bill. And, Frank was from this quarantine zone in Baltimore, I believe. And he's the only survivor in his group, and he's just trying to get to Boston. He ends up convincing Bill to let him inside to have lunch. Right before Frank's about to leave, he notices Bill's piano, and he goes over and tries to play it, and he's actually not good at it, even though in the podcast episode of Craig, Neil, and Troy talking about the details behind the scenes, apparently the guy that is portraying Frank in real life, he's a really good singer and really good on the piano, but in the show he had to act like he was actually bad at it. And then because the song that Frank was singing, I guess it was too personal, too emotional for Bill, so he tries to make him stop. And then Frank's like, okay, I'll stop and I'll leave, but now you got to play it. And so he does, and Bill's actually really good. He's a good singer and he's good on the piano. And then it just focuses to, or should I say it shifts over to Frank's face, and he's just looking at Bill and he's getting emotional because Frank can tell that Bill is, that he's gay. He can just tell. And they go over that in the podcast, where pretty much as soon as Frank sees Bill, he can just kind of tell that Bill is gay. So yeah, they have a really heartfelt moment, and Frank tells Bill to go upstairs to take a shower, and they have sex. And then it jumps to several years later, and Frank and Bill are pissed at each other because they're arguing because Frank wants to go out and make the rest of the town look beautiful, and Bill just doesn't care about that stuff. He only cares about making sure that Frank is safe. And Frank's like, you know what, we got to make this place look good because one day we're going to have friends over. And Bill's like, what are you talking about? There's no one else out there. We're never going to meet anyone else. And then Frank's like, well, there's some lady I've been talking to on the radio. And Bill's like, what? Like, he is pissed. And then it jumps to Bill and Frank having lunch with these two people, and guess who it is? It's Joel and Tess. And this is a flashback to 2007, so this is about 4 years after the pandemic starts. And so that confirms that Joel and Tess, up until the moment that Tess died, her and Joel were together for about 16 years. And that was something that was never revealed in the game. We didn't know how long Joel and Tess were together, and so now we know it's about 16 years. So they've been together a long time. And then Frank gets Tess to go inside to look at some stuff, and Joel and Bill start talking, and Bill has his gun on the table pointed at Joel because he doesn't trust Joel. And Joel's like, I get where you're coming from. If I had my partner and two people came to have lunch with us, I would be very paranoid as well. And then Joel just starts telling Bill, like, there's things that I have access to in the quarantine zone that you don't, like pills and stuff. And he tells him that his fence only has 1 more year max before it needs to be fixed. And so that's how their partnership begins. So that's how, their relationship is strictly pretty much just business. They make deals with each other, and then it cuts to Frank and Bill working out, or Bill trying to work out because Frank is just running laps around him. Frank tells Bill that he has something to show him, and so they go to the garden, and he has his eyes closed, and he reveals that Frank shows Bill that he's been building a garden of strawberries. And he tells Bill that he traded Joel one of Bill's guns for some seeds to plant. And Bill's like, what gun did you trade? And Frank's just like, oh, it's a smaller one, it doesn't matter. And they just eat a strawberry together, and this scene right here is the definition of why The Last of Us is so good at what it does. The most impressive thing that The Last of Us does in this show and the 2 games is the small, quiet, intimate moments. And it's just 2 guys sitting down and they're eating a strawberry. But it's absolutely beautiful. And Bill kind of confides and opens up to Frank for a second, and he's like, I'm sorry that I'm getting older faster than you are. And Frank's like, it's okay, I like you older. And then Bill tells Frank that he was never scared until he met Frank. So pretty much saying that until Frank showed up in his life, Bill didn't really care about anything. And now that he has a partner, he's scared because he doesn't want to leave Bill. He doesn't want to leave Frank. He doesn't want Frank to leave him because he cares about him deeply. And it's just a beautiful moment. And then it transitions to current day, so 10 years later, which is 2023. And sadly, Frank is in a wheelchair. Now, they don't officially confirm, like outright say what this disease is that put him in a wheelchair. And in the podcast, Craig pretty much says it's like a muscular type degenerative disease. So they don't really like say like, oh, it's cancer or whatever disease. They just kind of leave it ambiguous. And it's really sad because you got to see Bill take care of Frank now. And then when they go to bed, Bill wakes up the next morning and Frank is already awake sitting in his wheelchair. And Bill gets mad at Frank because he's like, you're not supposed to sleep in your wheelchair because it'll make your feet turn blue or whatever. Like, it's not good for you. And Frank's like, it's okay. Like, I promise I'll stay up today. And Bill's like, why? And Frank says that today will be his last day. And then they go to the next scene and Frank is just telling Bill, how he wants to spend his last day alive. And he wants to go down to the boutique and put on a suit and get married with Bill. And then come back home, have dinner. And he wants Bill to crush up pills and put it in his wine glass so he can drink it. And then when he goes to bed to fall asleep, he'll just pass away in Bill's arms. And obviously Bill is very emotional. He doesn't want this to happen. But Frank's like, do you love me? And Bill's like, yeah. And so Frank's like, well, then love me the way that I want you to love me. And so Bill does all those things. And it's revealed after Bill crushes up those pills and puts it in Frank's drink. And Frank just chugs the wine. Bill does the same thing. And there's a look on Frank's face. And it's revealed that there was already pills in the bottle to begin with. So Bill swallowed those pills as well. So now they're both going to die together. And Frank's confused. And Bill reveals that, there's pretty much no point in living without Frank because his whole entire purpose was Frank. And that he's lived a long, satisfying life. And yeah, like that's a big deviation from the game. And I thought it was beautiful because in the game, Bill never dies. Like Joel and Ellie take the truck and leave Bill, and that's the last time you ever see Bill. But in this show, in this episode, they change Bill's fate to where he dies now. But in a world like The Last of Us that they're living in, this is probably one of the best ways to go out. Like, you're in your own house with your significant other and you both pass away in each other's arms when you go to sleep. I mean, I would rather do that than get eaten alive or killed by hunters, And so yeah, then it transitions to Joel and Ellie after they read Bill's note, and they take his guns and the truck and they head off. And the last shot is them driving away on the road, and then it pans out and it shows that window that Bill and Frank are dead inside, and they left the window open. And it's just like the game with the window and the curtains blowing in the wind. And that's episode 3. And so yeah, I had a lot to say about this episode. I thought it was phenomenal. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 so far. All 3 episodes, 10 out of 10s. I am very excited for episode 4. And so yeah, guys, down below, let me know your thoughts on episode 3 of The Last of Us. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or find it informative, drop it a like, and hit the subscribe button by turning on the post notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. Until next time, guys, take care.